Russian President Vladimir Putin playing a central role in the 2016 campaign as America's relationship with Moscow continues to deteriorate. And amid Russia's air war in Syria and suspected hacking of the U.S. election comes yet another provocation. Earlier this month, the Kremlin deployed nuclear-capable missiles to Kaliningrad, a Russian exclave bordering Poland and Lithuania. Paul Wolfowitz was the Deputy Secretary of Defense under President George W. Bush. He's now a visiting scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. Thanks a lot for coming in, Paul.
Good to be with you.
So you followed Russia and Vladimir Putin for some time. What do you think he's trying to accomplish with these provocations in Middle East, Eastern Europe, and now in cyberspace?
I do think there are two important things to understand about this man who sort of aspires to be the new czar of Russia. Number one, his domestic position depends a great deal on his ability to flex his muscles.
Okay.
He became president by butchering the Chechens, then won re-election partly by invading Georgia. And I think this operation in Ukraine is also part of securing his domestic base, which is not all that secure because Russia's economy is in trouble.
Okay, but
I think the second thing, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead, Paul. Finish your point.
I think the second thing is, as someone used to say about the old Soviet Union, he's like a burglar going down a hallway, testing which doors are locked and going in the ones that aren't. And I think we've given him way too many opportunities to go through open doors.
All right. So basically, he's responding to weakness. He's going to grab whatever opportunities he can as he tries to expand into a kind of a greater Russia and reassert Russian influence on his border, east and west, and in the Middle East. Well,
and he also wants to win re-election and remain president of Russia probably through 2024, which I guess would put him at the age of 72. It's pretty ambitious.
All right. So take this issue of the hacking of emails, which our intelligence community now says they believe was taken up at the highest levels of Russia, which means Vladimir Putin. We haven't responded yet, although Joe Biden has said we will. Do you think the United States has to respond to that in some way?
I think we have to. I think it's very important. In fact, it's important not just with respect to Russian behavior, but in general, if bad actors, whether they're states or individuals or groups, believe that they can attack us in this flagrant way without suffering any consequences, then we'll get much more of it. So I don't know what we will do in response, and we may never know if we have adequately responded. But the people who are doing it need to know that they've paid a price, a serious price.
But to your point there, the people who did it need to know if they're paying a price. But if we're trying to send a message around the world to others, don't do this, then the world really does need to know that we've responded in some important way, no?
You're absolutely right. Yes, they do. And one way or another, they need to learn.
Would you go so far as to suggest, as some have, including James Stavridis, who's a former admiral, suggesting that what we need to do is perhaps consider hacks ourselves, going on offense and releasing some of the secrets of these Kremlin operators, people who, maybe they have foreign bank accounts, for example. Maybe they have emails of their own, which would be embarrassing. Would you go so far as to suggest that should be an option?
I think their bank accounts are, frankly, one of the Achilles heels of this regime. And yes, I do think if we have information about them, especially information about how money has been stolen from the Russian people, it's important to get it out.
Yeah,
they deserve it.
That's interesting. Now, okay, so we're going to have a new president, one or the other, Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. What would be your advice to the new president about how to address Putin? Do we need really a new policy toward it, and what should it be?
Look, I think that you have to start by recognizing that the old policy that they're inheriting is a bad one.
Right.
That we've been going down the wrong course, providing opportunities when we should have been closing them off. I think you also have to recognize that you can't reverse course overnight. It'd be like trying to throw a car in reverse when it's been going too fast down the highway. You need to pick your targets well. You need to act in a way at the beginning that convinces other people that have to be with you that, in fact, you're serious. So I think it'd be no question going after the cyber attacks would be one way of showing seriousness. But I think it's important to also show seriousness against the kind of aggression that the Russians have been conducting, whether it's in Syria or in Ukraine, or, as you pointed out, with this deployment of missiles into on the border of two NATO allies in the border of Lithuania and Poland.
Yeah, but that means sending a message to the Europeans, for example, that we're going to lead so that we don't want them to weaken sanctions against Russia. We may even want to strengthen sanctions. I assume that's got to be on the table.
Yeah, I'm not yet persuaded that the sanctions make a very big difference.
Okay.
But if there are sanctions that can be really painful, especially for the plutocrats that run the regime, that would be a good thing. If there are things that we can do by the way of a more positive kind to bolster Ukraine and bolster the Ukrainian economy and bolster Ukraine diplomatically, which I believe has finally started to happen a little bit in the Council of Europe, that would be a very important piece of this also, so that Russia doesn't... I think one of Putin's objectives in Ukraine is to make sure that that country fails, because it's a very bad example for his own people. It's a country that expelled a plutocratic dictator, and then people went through his mansion and discovered how he had been stealing from them. That's not something Putin wants to see in Russia.
All right.
But I also think an important place to start, frankly, would be in Syria, where there's both a humanitarian emergency that the Russians are causing and a strategic disaster that they are causing as well.
All right. Thank you, Paul Wolfowitz, for coming in. Appreciate it.